Hello, everybody. Today, I want to talk about what it means that everyone is in crisis and that we should be kind and civil to one another. Uh, so, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of what it's going to be about, and then I'm going to try to share this. Um, it's absolutely true that we don't know what the other person that we're talking to on the phone or who might be standing in line at the grocery store could be going through right now. And it could be worse than what we're going through, or it could be better than what we're going through, because we're all going through something all the time. And just because you don't see a handicap on a person doesn't mean that that person isn't currently handicapped by some situation in his or her life. So, what does that mean? Well, it means we should behave well as we can to other people. It means that we should be kind when it's possible to be kind. It means we shouldn't yell at other people or be rude, but we shouldn't do that anyway. Here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that if you as a person know that you're in a particular crisis, that you have the right to be rude to other people. It's not a dispensation to be rude to others or to be mean to others or to be cruel to others just because you happen to be feeling bad at any particular moment. So that's the difference between, taking a positive look at the idea that we are all in trouble to some extent, and having a negative idea. But I've encountered a lot of people who think that because they're in a bad mood, or because something really bad has just happened to them, or because they're really concerned or they're really distraught, it's okay to take it out on another person. It is not okay. Okay, now I'm going to share this. Okay, so, everybody is in some kind of crisis. And if we're all in crisis, we're in the same boat. But what does that mean? That doesn't mean that anytime you want to cut in line, you should be able to say, hey, look, I've got a handicap sticker that says I'm in crisis, therefore I get to push you out of the way. Shouldn't work that way. There are people who are born with wonderful skills. They're very athletic. When they go to get their driver's license the first time, they pass immediately. And then they're speed freaks and they get into an accident and suddenly they're in a wheelchair and they've got a handicap sticker, and it allows them to get in front of somebody who may have always had poor hand-eye coordination, who may have failed the driver's test many, many times, who may have difficulty with the skills that are necessary to park in a certain place, and they get to go to the head of the line. And does that make sense? It doesn't. It does not make sense for us to wear our particular handicap as a badge that allows us to stick ourselves into a certain place where others can't go. We might be in a bad mood. We might have a very good reason to be in a bad mood, but that's not a reason to be uncivil to another person, because you never know what they're going through too. So the bottom line is that nobody has the right to step on somebody else's toes. Nobody. So I have a story about my father to tell. Before they crossed the border into Russian-held land, before my father's family crossed several borders to get out of a situation that they were in, because they were in Poland and they needed to get out of it. And one half was occupied by Germany, and the other part was occupied by Russia. But they needed to go out at night and cross several borders so that they could get on a ship and get to Israel. Well, before they could leave, they were all in a one-room apartment waiting to go. And my father was 4 years old, and there was another little boy who was about the same age. And they knew they had to be quiet. And that little boy stepped on my father's toes, and was trying to get my father to make a noise. And my father knew it was very serious, so he did not make a noise. When it was time to choose people to go on the expedition over the border, the family of that little boy was not chosen, because they knew, the people who were crossing the border knew that it was important to be silent while doing so. My father was a 4-year-old boy who was carried in a sack over the border, and everybody's life hung in the balance of whether he could be quiet or not. But they already knew him, and they knew that he could be quiet, that he could obey, that he could behave in a civil fashion, even though he was only 4 years old. So he got to cross the border, and he got to survive. And that other little boy who couldn't behave well, who had to take it out on somebody else, did not survive. Okay? And you can say, well, that's really unfair, because that was just a little boy. Yeah, it was just a little boy, but life is dangerous. And the people that we want to be our companions, the people crossing the border with us, the people that we entrust our lives to, have to be people that we can rely on, not to freak out, and not to make life any more difficult than it has to be. Our enemies are our enemies, but when our friends are behaving like this, we have to distance ourselves just for the sake of survival. So we've all had the experience of blowing up at somebody or getting angry with somebody, and maybe it was because we were under an extreme amount of pressure. If you do that, it's not the end of the world, but you have to apologize and you have to take that responsibility. You can't say, well, okay, I have this handicap, or I was under this pressure, or I didn't get enough sleep that night, or whatever, and therefore I blew up at you. You have to take responsibility for what you've done that was not civil. And then you can move on. But everybody has problems. Everybody is afraid that they're not going to survive, and all of us are going to eventually not survive. What we can't do is give special dispensations for bad behavior. And I think maybe in our society right now, that's what's been happening. And just all sorts of dispensations. You know, for instance, if you can prove you have a certain handicap, you can get more time to take an exam than somebody else who can't prove that they have that handicap. But anybody going into a test, and really life is a test, has got some kind of problem. Each of us has a different problem. And it doesn't make sense to say, well, you've got this problem, so we'll give you more time, but you've got that problem. We don't acknowledge this problem, so we won't give you more time. It's all about survival. It's survival for each of us. Our friends are the people that we can count on and that we can tell the truth to. But they're not somebody that we're allowed to step on their toes and make them scream. That's not okay. It's never okay to be abusive. And ultimately, that's going to affect people. And if we don't distance ourselves from the people who burden us to the point where we can't survive, we're not going to survive. So, by all means, be aware that the person to the right of you has problems. The person to the left of you has problems. Everybody is handicapped in some way or another, whether it's physical, mental, with their family situation, their money problems, whatever it is. We all have problems, and we want to surround ourselves with people who are going to be civil to us. And we want to be civil to those people as well. So if you find yourself, hiding out from the Nazis in a little room, please be aware that if you're not kind to the other people in the room, this might in fact backfire and you may not survive. And every person has to think of his own survival first. So that's what I have to say today. Be kind. Be aware that other people might be in trouble. And if for any reason you think that you can't be civil on a particular day, then maybe just stay home until you can be.